All right, get ready, because we're going to be looking at some research that just might change how you think about memory. Like completely change it. We're talking a whole new understanding of how memories are formed and how they're stored in the brain. And guess what? It's not just about neurons this time.
Yeah, you got it. We're diving deep today into an article from Baylor College of Medicine. It was just published November 6th, 2024 in Nature. And get this, it's called Astrocytes, the brain's hidden memory architects revealed. It turns out that these brain cells, astrocytes, they've been kind of overlooked,
Yeah.
But they might actually be playing a much bigger role in memory than we ever thought.
Okay, so before we get into all that, remind me, what was the traditional view of memory? It was all about neurons,
right?
Especially those groups of neurons called engrams.
Yeah, that's right, engrams. Well, think of them like physical imprints of a memory etched into a network of neurons. So when we learn something, what happens is a specific network of neurons is activated, and then that network becomes like the physical representation of that memory.
Oh, okay, I see. So that makes sense. But then where do these astrocytes fit into all of this? I always thought they were kind of like the support staff of the brain, just keeping the neurons happy and healthy.
Right, that's traditionally what we thought. Astrocytes, they are essential for providing nutrients and stuff.
Yeah.
And for maintaining the right environment so the neurons can do their thing. But, this research suggests that they might be doing a lot more than just housekeeping.
Okay, so spill the beans. What did the Baylor researchers discover that's so groundbreaking?
Well, they developed some really cool new tools that let them specifically study astrocyte activity, like stuff related to memory. And what they found was really remarkable. They did this experiment with mice. It was a fear conditioning experiment, where they basically conditioned these mice to fear a specific environment by pairing it with like a mild electric shock.
So like later when they put the mouse back in that same environment, it would just freeze up because they remembered that fear, right?
Yeah, exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. During that learning process, when they were pairing the environment with the shock, a certain subset of astrocytes, they switched on a gene called c-Fos. And c-Fos is known to be involved in regulating memory circuits. It was kind of surprising to see this gene active in astrocytes, because usually we just associate it with active neurons during learning.
So basically these astrocytes were like, hey, we're part of this memory thing too, but how were they actually involved?
Well, what they found was that the c-Fos expressing astrocytes, they were really close to the enneagram neurons, the ones that hold the fear memory. And not only were they physically close, they were functionally connected too, meaning they were actually communicating with each other.
Whoa, so like a two-way conversation. It wasn't just neurons talking to themselves.
That's right. It was like a back and forth thing, a bidirectional communication loop. When they activated the astrocytes, it stimulated the neuron engram, and then when they activated the neuron engram, that triggered a response in the astrocytes.
So they were like in sync. It's like they were doing this tightly choreographed dance between the neurons and the astrocytes.
Yeah.
But how did they actually know for sure that these astrocytes were involved in triggering the memory recall?
Well, they did another experiment. They took mice that had already been fear conditioned, right? And they put them in a totally new environment, like a safe, non-fearful environment, where they wouldn't normally freeze up. But then, get this, they specifically activated the astrocyte ensemble. That had been active during that initial fear conditioning.
So they're like recreating the fear response, but in a totally different environment. By just activating those specific astrocytes, what happened?
The mice froze, just like they were back in that original fearful situation. It was as if those specific astrocytes, they held the key to unlocking that fear memory.
That's crazy. But wait, there's more, right? They didn't just stop there.
No, they didn't. They wanted to understand how it all worked at the molecular level, so that they focused on this protein called NFIA. NFIA is known to regulate memory circuits.
Okay, I have a feeling they found something important here.
They did. They found the astrocytes that were activated during learning had high levels of NFIA, so then they blocked NFIA, specifically in those learning-activated astrocytes. And the mice could no longer remember that specific fear memory. But here's a really cool part. Blocking NFIA only prevented the recall of that specific memory, not other memories.
That's incredible. So it seems like NFIA in those astrocytes is essential for encoding and retrieving specific memories. It's not just some general on-off switch for all memories. It's way more nuanced than that. So this really does show that astrocytes are way more involved in memory than we thought.
It really does. It's not just neurons running the show. It's a much more complex picture.
Yeah, it's like we've been missing half the story this whole time.
And you know what that means. It means we have a lot more to talk about. Like, what are the implications of all this research? Especially when we think about conditions like Alzheimer's disease. and PTSD. We'll get into all that right after this.
Okay, can't wait. So this is really mind-blowing. We've been so focused on neurons for so long. It's like we haven't even been looking at the whole picture of how memory works.
Yeah, it's true. We're just now starting to get the full picture. And it opens up some really exciting possibilities, especially when we think about treating those memory-related conditions.
Okay, so like what kind of conditions are we talking about here?
Well, think about Alzheimer's disease. Millions of people are affected by it, and we still don't even know what causes it or have a cure for it. But if astrocytes are really involved in memory, then they could be a new target for therapies.
Okay, so instead of focusing on the neurons that are dying off,
Mm.
we could try to target the astrocytes to preserve memory function.
Exactly. And it's not just about preserving memories. This research could also help with conditions like PTSD, where the memories are like intrusive and unwanted.
That's right. With PTSD, it's not that people can't remember, it's that they can't stop remembering certain things.
Right. So if we can figure out how astrocytes contribute to retrieving those specific memories, we might be able to develop new treatments to help people manage those intrusive memories.
Wow, so you're saying we might be able to target specific memories, like strengthen or weaken them. It sounds kind of like science fiction.
I know, right? But we have to remember that this research is still very new. We have a lot more to learn about astrocytes and how they work with neurons before we can even start talking about like memory editing pills or anything like that.
Okay, so no memory erasing pills anytime soon.
Probably not. But I think the potential here is huge. This research is a big step forward in our understanding of how the brain and memory work.
It's pretty amazing. So let's recap what we've learned. Astrocytes are not just passive bystanders. They're active players in how our memories are formed, stored, and even retrieved. And they could be the key to treating some really serious conditions.
Yeah, and for me, the biggest takeaway is that the brain is so much more complex than we thought. And the fact that we still don't know everything about how it works, well, that's what makes this research so exciting.
Like we're just scratching the surface of what the brain can do.
Exactly. Who knows what we'll discover next?
That's a perfect point. But before we wrap up, there's one more thing I want to bring up. This whole idea of targeting astrocytes to manipulate memories, that brings up some big questions, don't you think?
I agree. There is a lot of potential there. But we can't just think about the science. We have to think about the ethics, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What are those thoughts on that?
Well, let's talk about that next.
Okay, so we've been talking about this research on astrocytes and memory and how it could lead to all these new treatments for things like Alzheimer's and PTSD. But there's another side to this, right? If we can actually target these astrocytes to like manipulate specific memories, doesn't that bring up some ethical questions?
Oh, absolutely. It's a big question. And it's something that scientists and ethicists are really starting to think about.
Like what kind of issues are we talking about here?
Well, imagine if we could just erase traumatic memories, like from a car accident or losing a loved one. On the one hand, it sounds amazing to be able to alleviate that kind of suffering. But our memories, even the painful ones, they really shape who we are. They influence our personality, our values, our choices.
You're saying erasing those memories, even if they're painful, could actually change a person.
Exactly. And it might change them in ways we don't fully understand. And then there's the question of who gets to decide? Which memories are bad enough to be erased? Where do we draw the line?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope for sure. It makes you wonder if we could end up using this technology for bad reasons, like controlling people's minds.
It's definitely something we have to be careful about. There's potential for misuse. As this research moves forward, we need to have these conversations about the ethical side of things. We need to figure out some guidelines and safeguards so we can make sure this technology is used responsibly.
It feels like we're at a crossroads. We're about to unlock these incredible secrets about the brain. But we got to be careful.
Yeah, I agree. We're entering uncharted territory.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive. It's really made me think about not just how memory works, but what it means to be human.
And it's really just the beginning. There's still so much we don't know about the brain.
That's what makes it so exciting. To all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep. There's always more to learn. Until next time.